By evening, you just want to sit down. Not because you're tired in the usual way, not because you had a particularly hard day. It's your legs. There's a heaviness to them, a kind of dull, dragging weight that wasn't there at 9 in the morning. Maybe there's some mild aching. Maybe your ankles look a little puffier than they did when you got up. You prop your feet up, and after a while it eases enough that you stop thinking about it. And then tomorrow evening, it happens again. I've heard this described in so many different ways over the years. My legs feel like lead by dinner. I feel fine in the morning, but by 7 o'clock I can barely walk to the kitchen. It's not pain exactly, it's more like my legs just feel done. Most people assume it's standing too long, or walking too much, or not walking enough, or just the general wear and tear of getting older. Sometimes it is those things.
But sometimes, and this is what I want to talk to you about today, those heavy legs in the evening are the body pointing at something else entirely, something deeper, something that, if left unexamined, quietly compounds over time. And one of those causes, in particular, is one that most people would never think to connect to their legs at all. Let me start with the most straightforward explanation, because I always want to earn your trust by being honest about what's simple before I get to what's complicated. When you stand or sit with your legs down for most of the day, gravity is constantly pulling fluid toward your lower extremities. Your circulatory system, specifically the veins in your legs, has to work against that gravity to push blood back up toward the heart. The valves inside those veins act like one-way gates, preventing blood from sliding back down between heartbeats. Think of it like a series of locks on a canal. Each lock holds the water at a certain level and passes it upward, one stage at a time. When those valves weaken, which happens gradually over time, with age, with prolonged standing, with weight changes, some blood pools in the lower legs instead of returning efficiently. Fluid seeps from the blood vessels into the surrounding tissue, and that's what you feel as heaviness. That's what you see as puffiness around the ankles by evening. This is called chronic venous insufficiency, and it's far more common than most people realize. It's not dangerous in its mild form, but it is a signal that the venous return system isn't working optimally, and that signal deserves attention, not dismissal. What concerns me clinically is when people spend years managing the discomfort without ever understanding the cause, because venous insufficiency that's recognized and addressed early can be significantly improved. Left completely alone, it tends to progress. The tissue changes. The skin becomes vulnerable. In more advanced cases, wounds can develop on the lower leg that are extremely difficult to heal. We don't need to go there, but we need to not ignore the early signs either. Now, here's where things become more complicated and more important. Not all leg heaviness is venous, and this is the distinction that keeps me up at night, professionally speaking, because it's the one most likely to be missed. The heart is a pump. It receives blood from the body and sends it back out. When that pump begins to work less efficiently, when the heart muscle weakens, when it has to work harder than it should against elevated blood pressure, when the chambers don't empty as completely as they once did, fluid starts to back up. And because of gravity, it backs up into the legs. This is called heart failure. And I want to be clear about what that term means and what it doesn't mean. It does not mean the heart has stopped. It does not mean something catastrophic is happening right now. What it means is that the heart's pumping efficiency has declined enough that fluid is accumulating in places it shouldn't be. And one of the first and most consistent places that fluid shows up is in the legs. Heavy legs by evening. Ankles that indent when you press on them and hold that indentation for a few seconds. Shoes that fit in the morning but feel tight by afternoon. What makes this so easy to miss is the pace at which it develops. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It creeps in over months. And because each individual change is small, the whole picture only becomes clear when someone stops and looks at it honestly. I had a patient I'll call Richard. 73 years old, former contractor, still remarkably active. He came in complaining of fatigue and mentioned, almost incidentally, that his legs had been feeling heavy in the evenings for about a year. He'd attributed it entirely to the physical work he still did around his property. His heart function had declined to about 40% of normal. He had no chest pain, no dramatic symptoms, just tired legs at the end of the day, and a fatigue he'd been pushing through. We caught it, we treated it, he's doing well now. But if he'd waited another year, and he almost did, the picture would have looked very different. The point isn't to frighten you. The point is that the legs are often the first place the heart speaks, and most people aren't listening for that conversation. There's another cause I want to spend some time on, because I think it's discussed far less than it should be. Your kidneys. The kidneys regulate fluid balance in the body with extraordinary precision. They decide, moment by moment, how much water to retain and how much to release. When kidney function declines, which it does gradually in many people after 60, often without a single obvious symptom, that regulation becomes less precise. The kidneys may retain more sodium than they should, and wherever sodium goes, water follows. That excess water has to go somewhere, and again, because of gravity, it tends to settle in the legs. What makes kidney-related fluid retention particularly tricky is that it can look almost identical to venous insufficiency or early heart failure on the surface. Heavy legs, puffy ankles, that same end-of-day dragging sensation. Only the underlying cause is different, and the cause determines the treatment. I've seen patients put on compression stockings for years, which helps with venous insufficiency, when what they actually needed was attention to declining kidney function and the salt load in their diet. The stockings provided some relief, but they were addressing the symptom, while the cause continued unchecked. If you haven't had a basic kidney function panel, creatinine, eGFR, electrolytes, in the last year, and you're experiencing regular leg heaviness, that's worth putting on your list for your next appointment. Now I want to talk about something that surprised even me when I first started paying close attention to it: medication. Specifically, certain very common medications that are widely prescribed to people over 60 and that list leg swelling as a side effect in the fine print, but rarely get that conversation in the exam room. Calcium channel blockers are among the most commonly prescribed blood pressure medications in this country. Amlodipine, nifedipine, felodipine, these are household names in older Americans' medicine cabinets, and they work well for blood pressure. But one of their known side effects is peripheral edema, fluid accumulation in the lower legs, in a meaningful percentage of people who take them. The mechanism is almost poetic in its irony. These medications work by relaxing blood vessels, but they relax the arteries more than the veins, so blood flows into the legs more easily, but doesn't drain out as efficiently. The result is the exact sensation we've been describing: heaviness, puffiness, that end-of-day ache. Many people have been living with medication-induced leg swelling for years without knowing that's what it is. They assume it's aging. They assume it's their veins. Meanwhile, there may be an equally effective blood pressure medication without that side effect that nobody has offered them, simply because nobody made the connection. Certain diabetes medications, some anti-inflammatory drugs, and even some antidepressants can contribute to fluid retention in the legs. None of this means you should stop taking anything on your own. It means that if you're experiencing regular leg heaviness, your medication list is a legitimate and important part of that conversation with your doctor. There's one more piece I want to address, and it's the one most people genuinely don't expect: thyroid function. An underactive thyroid, hypothyroidism, causes the body to slow down in ways that are diffuse and gradual and easy to miss. Metabolism slows, circulation slows, the lymphatic system, which helps clear fluid from the tissues, becomes less efficient. One of the results can be a particular kind of leg heaviness and swelling that's slightly different from what we've described so far. It tends to be more uniform, not just the ankles, but the lower leg as a whole. The skin may feel somewhat thicker or more doughy to the touch, and it often comes with other low-grade symptoms that people have been dismissing individually: feeling colder than they used to, some hair thinning, a general mental fogginess, fatigue that sleep doesn't fully relieve. Hypothyroidism is extremely common after 60, particularly in women, and it is frequently underdiagnosed, partly because its symptoms overlap with so many other things, and partly because the standard thyroid test doesn't always catch the full picture. If you've been told your thyroid is normal, but you're still experiencing several of these things, it may be worth a more detailed thyroid panel, including T3 levels, not just TSH. This is a conversation worth having specifically, not generally. Let me shift now to what you can actually do, because information without direction isn't much use to anyone. Movement is the single most effective tool for venous return. Not marathon walking, just regular, deliberate movement throughout the day. The muscles in your calves act as a secondary pump, squeezing the veins and pushing blood upward when they contract. When you sit still for long periods, that pump stops working. Even standing up and walking to the kitchen every hour makes a measurable difference in how much fluid accumulates by evening. Elevation helps immediately. Lying down with your legs raised above the level of your heart, a pillow under your calves while you rest in the afternoon, lets gravity work in the opposite direction and allows accumulated fluid to drain back toward the core. Many people find that 30 minutes of this in the afternoon significantly reduces the evening heaviness. Compression. If your doctor has confirmed that venous insufficiency is contributing to your symptoms, graduated compression stockings worn during the day, not at night, can make a substantial difference. The key word is graduated, meaning the compression is tighter at the ankle and gradually decreases up the leg, which assists the upward return of blood. Off-the-shelf stockings from the pharmacy work for mild cases. Medical-grade compression requires a prescription, but is considerably more effective. Sodium is worth examining honestly. Most Americans consume far more sodium than they realize, not from the salt shaker, but from processed foods, canned goods, restaurant meals, and packaged snacks. Every extra gram of sodium your body retains pulls water along with it. For people with any component of kidney or heart-related fluid retention, reducing sodium intake can produce noticeable changes in leg swelling within days. And then there's the medical conversation, the one I'd encourage you not to postpone. If your legs have been heavy regularly for more than a few weeks, bring it up directly and specifically at your next appointment. Don't mention it in passing. Don't say, "Oh, and my legs have been a little puffy." Say, "I want to talk about my leg heaviness because it's been consistent, and I'd like to understand what's driving it." Ask specifically about heart function, kidney function, thyroid levels, and whether any of your current medications could be contributing. You deserve a thorough answer, not a quick reassurance. I've been in practice long enough to notice something that cuts across every kind of patient, every age, every background. The people who do best in the long run are the ones who take their mild symptoms seriously. Not obsessively, not anxiously, but seriously. They don't catastrophize, but they also don't dismiss. Heavy legs in the evening are not inevitably a sign of something serious. Often they reflect habits and mechanics that are very addressable, but they are always worth understanding, because the body doesn't generate symptoms randomly. It generates them in response to something. And knowing what that something is puts you in a completely different position than not knowing. There's a particular kind of quiet courage in deciding to pay attention to your own body, to say, "I've been noticing this for a while, and I'd like to understand it." Not everyone does that. Some people find it easier to explain things away, and I understand why. But awareness is not the same as worry. Awareness is a tool. Use it. Tell me in the comments, does this happen to you? The evening heaviness, the puffy ankles, the legs that just feel done by the end of the day? Is it one leg more than the other, or both equally? And have you brought it up with your doctor, or has it been one of those things you've been quietly managing on your own? I ask because these details matter, and because sometimes reading someone else's description in the comments is what finally helps a person recognize that what they're experiencing has a name and a solution. If you found this useful, there's another video I'd encourage you to watch about what nighttime leg cramps specifically are telling you, and the deficiencies most doctors aren't checking for. It connects directly to what we discussed today, and the information in it catches a lot of people off guard. Take good care of yourself. And tonight, when you sit down to rest those legs, maybe prop them up a little. Your circulation will thank you.